Connectra creates opportunities for people living with disabilities by providing information, resources, and programming geared towards greater inclusion and quality of life. Check out some of the programs we offer through our online learning platform, Connect Together, including our Service Mondays, where we highlight a local organization or initiative. This month, you'll learn about programs with the Richmond Centre for Disability and Gambling Support BC. Tuesdays are for ABC Studios Art Therapy with Connectra. Wednesdays are Chair Yoga with Bobby Seal-Kavisky. Thursdays are Adaptive Fitness with Ocean Rehab and Fitness. Fridays are Contemporary Improv Dance Classes with Janice Lawrence. Every third Friday is a growable presentation by the Disabled Independent Gardening Association. This month, we're talking squirrels in Stanley Park, so don't miss out on September 15th. Every third Monday is our Perspective series, where you'll hear from guest speakers on varying topics. Join us on September 18th to hear a discussion about navigating music with a disability. Save the date for our upcoming Accessible Community Forum on accessible healthcare in British Columbia on October 27th. Check our website for more information and to have your voice heard by filling out our survey. Check out our updated programs calendar on our website, connectra.org, or find us on Facebook at Connectra Society.
Okay, you can start.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kaiser. And welcome everyone to our Perspective series on navigating finances with a disability. We have an awesome panel here today, so really looking forward to having a great discussion. I will just let you know that if you require closed captioning, make sure to enable them in Zoom. And before we begin, just to let everyone know that this is being live streamed to Facebook and YouTube as well. So you can choose to have your camera on or off, whatever you're comfortable with. We really would like these discussions to be an open dialogue. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, or if you'd prefer to speak, you should have the ability to unmute yourself, or you can use the raise hand function on Zoom, and I will call on you. So let's just be really respectful of people's opinions and time and try and make sure that everybody gets heard. And yeah, I'm going to start off by introducing the panel, and then I will let the panelists say a little bit about themselves. Okay. So first off, I'm Emily Chambers, and I am your program coordinator at Connectra. So we book all things on Connect Together, this learning platform. And joining us from Disability Alliance, we have Cynthia Minh. Cynthia works as the Director for Disability Alliance BC's Tax Aid and Access RDSP programs. Alongside partner organizations, these programs have supported thousands of people with disabilities across BC with income tax filing and related benefits, including the Disability Tax Credit and Registered Disability Savings Plan. Cynthia sits on the Board of Directors for Plan Institute and is a community member for Emily Carr's Research Ethics Board as well. Cynthia, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that sums it up. Thank you, Emily. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Next, we have Petra Chaffey-Johnson from Easter Seals. Being born to deaf parents, having a disability herself, and raising a child with a disability, Petra Chaffey-Johnson has always been surrounded by amazing people and disability communities, which naturally led her to work with Easter Seals. She is based in Newfoundland and Labrador as the program officer for the Secure Futures Financial Literacy Program. This program, with support from other organizations and professionals, provides a space for individuals with disabilities to learn about spending, making, and saving money, including RDSPs. Other than working, motherhood, and everything in between, Petra is most at peace when near the ocean and beachcombing for treasures. Well, thank you for being here, Petra. Do you want to add anything? You're just muted there. It happens at least once a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think with all this practice we've had lately, that's a excellent introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. And last but not least, we have Liss Cairns. Liss, I hope I said your last name right. Okay, perfect. Liss is a non-binary person who has led a lifelong mental health related disabilities who has had lifelong mental health related disabilities, and is currently their wife's caregiver. They graduated in 2019 with a bachelor's degree in criminology and psychology, incredibly interesting, from SFU, and were provided with their first disability-centered experience through the university's cooperative education program in 2017. Liss is currently one of the program managers at Plan Institute. Their work includes managing PI's free national disability planning helpline service, managing the wills, trusts, and estate planning workshops, supporting the Access RDSP program in collaboration with DABC, and BC Aboriginal Network on Disability Society, BCANDS, and assisting with the Disability Without Poverty movement wherever possible. Liss is also on the board of directors for DABC and has recently completed the fall term at UBC's Interprofessional Health Mentors program as a mentor. Thanks for being here, Liss. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And just to say welcome to everyone, and Plan Institute's Disability Planning Helpline Service is available for any of your future disability planning questions. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. We'll definitely get an overview of how these things work and the different sort of streams that you're all in. I'd love to start the conversation actually with Cynthia. Do you want to just give us a bit of a definition of the RDSP and sort of your role in aiding people with that?
Sure thing, and I'll definitely pass it over to Liss and probably also Petra to sort of fill in the gaps that I will definitely have. The RDSP, the Registered Disability Savings Plan, is a long-term savings plan designed to help people with disabilities save for their financial futures. How it works is it's kind of like a retirement savings plan in that it's for your later years. So you kind of might think of it akin to an RRSP. The difference is that this savings plan allows people to access significant government contributions to the plan. That is almost $90,000 in government grants and government bonds. So it's a really important financial tool that we find really helps with long-term financial stability and is a poverty reduction tool. And so that's the plan in a nutshell. What we do find though is that getting the RDSP is a little bit difficult, which is why we're here today, and we're going to talk about some steps and some tips to navigate through that. Liss and Petra, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say that one of the best parts about the RDSP is that it was designed to be a primarily exempt asset. So this means that for all federal benefits, so for example, old age security, guaranteed income supplement, the RDSP is considered exempt. So no matter how much money is saved in there or how much money is withdrawn, it'll never impact eligibility for that. And outside of that, almost all provinces and territories have also exempted it. So for example, in British Columbia, the Persons with Disability Income Assistance program also exempts the RDSP. So you can have up to $200,000 in personal contributions, up to $90,000 in the government contributions, and then unlimited investment income in the account, all without impacting eligibility for disability benefits. So can be a really great way for folks to be able to save up money without worrying about impacting other benefits they may currently or possibly in the future be receiving. And then Petra, anything from yourself?
Yeah, so another awesome thing about the RDSP is that anybody can contribute to your RDSP. You know, if you have a family member that wants to help you save money for the future, a great way for them to help you do that is to contribute money into your RDSP.
Awesome, thanks. That gives a great overview for us to sort of start with. Actually, Petra, while you have the floor, I would love for you to sort of explain a little bit about the Secure Futures Financial Literacy program at Easter Seals.
Yeah, so the Secure Futures program is, we've only been running it for about 2 years, but it does help fill in some gaps between folks, you know, just getting out of high school and trying to figure out how to do their taxes for the first time and earning their own income, and then trying to figure out like what benefits and credits can I apply for. It also helps folks manage their money, the money that they earn, and it also helps them kind of understand the reasons why money is so important, and why they want to spend money on some things, and why it's important for them to continue saving. And it has a it has a disability lens on it. So we do focus on like uh, different organizations within our province here in Newfoundland and Labrador that help folks obtain respite hours, or help pay for personal care, or get different types of equipment, medical equipment, adaptive tech, anything like that. So it's really just anything and everything to do with money, starting from why do I want to buy all the Kinder eggs and collect every prize, to setting up an RDSP and planning for the future.
That's awesome. That's a wide range of
Very, very
yeah.
wide. Yeah,
Topic.
it comes in a different form. So we do have like a class-based, we do one-on-one, and then we also help out with the community volunteer income tax clinic to make a more accessible tax clinic.
Amazing. That's awesome. And we'll make sure to have all of the websites and resources mentioned up here on our website after this meeting is over. So it usually takes us about a week to get them up. But if you have any resources that you'd like to put in the chat along the way in the conversation, we'll make sure to share those with everybody after the fact. And I would love for us to get a little better idea, Liss, of the wills, trust, and estate planning workshops and some of the other work and your planning helpline service. If you could talk about that, the disability planning helpline service a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So Plan Institute is a national nonprofit organization, and so the majority of our supports and services are completely free to access. So, for example, we have a bunch of course offerings or like workshop offerings. So currently we have a registered disability savings plan level 1, which is really your intro to RDSP workshop, which we host once a month. Both our level 1 and then our level 2, which is more advanced for people who either already have an RDSP or are like right at the step to open one or have opened one recently. And so we offer each of those once a month. We actually have our next level 1 webinar coming up tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific. And then our level 2 is next week on Tuesday. So those are free and gives a great overview of the plan. Recordings are available after. And then similarly with our wills, trust, and estate planning option. So that webinar we used to have a cost associated, but as of basically September 1st, when we started offering them again for the fall, we've removed that cost. So now they're completely free for folks to be able to access. And then they'll also get a link to the recording of those workshops. And so that really talks about how to prepare for the future of either yourself or a loved one with a disability, while also preserving your disability benefits. So it talks a lot about the importance of having a will, what types of different trust options are available to folks. And then there's also the opportunity to have a question and answer period with a lawyer who is an expert in disability law and regulations. And so, and as well with one of our helpline advisors, and segueing that into our helpline service, which is again free to access. We have an email and phone number for that, and I'll put that in the chat in a little bit. And basically you can reach out. We've got a team of advisors, all who have different kind of disability planning specialties. So for example, we have some that are experts on the RDSP, some on the disability tax credit, some on wills, trust, and estate planning, some on supported decision-making, regular financial planning, really anything. If we don't have the answer, we try to either find that answer or refer you to the right organization or resource that can. So really trying to be as helpful as we can, and know that if we can't support you, we'll do our best to find someone or an organization that can.
That's really awesome. So that's a great place for somebody to go if they maybe didn't know what sort of disability subsidies or grants they might be able to apply for. They could kind of start by reaching out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Can we talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements for the RDSP? I don't know if Cynthia wants to start that.
Sure, yes. So eligibility requirements for the RDSP is that you have to be considered a tax resident of Canada. You also have to have your disability tax credit And you also, there are some age requirements for the RDSP. So you have to be turning 59 or open the RDSP within the calendar year that you turn 59 or under. And in order to access any grants or bonds, you have to open the RDSP within the calendar year of the year that you turn 49. So there's two different age requirements for when you can open the RDSP. And there are reasons why you might open the RDSP at different ages, but you would have to fall within that age range. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What if you've missed that?
Yeah, so if you've missed that, if you're over, let's say 59, you're unable to open the RDSP. And if you're over the age of 49, unfortunately, you'll be unable to get any grants and bonds, even the retroactive grants and bonds that are made available to people who do open the RDSP.
Okay, so those are good numbers to know, 49 and 59. Petra, do you want to add anything to that, or Liss? Just talking about some of the eligibility requirements for the RDSP?
Yeah, I think Cynthia primarily covered it. The only other thing would be that you also need to have a valid social insurance number, both for the holder and the beneficiary. And Christina, do you have a question around this?
Sort of. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not, but I'm going to be getting an inheritance, and so I don't know how that's going to affect my disability benefits and the RDSP. Like, it's not going to be like, thousands and like trillions of dollars, right? But it's going to be like anywhere from like $15,000 to $25,000, right? So,
okay. And what's your current age?
I'm 45.
45. Okay. And do you currently have the disability tax credit?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And have you opened an RDSP up yet?
Yes, I've had one for many years.
Okay, fabulous. So that sounds like a pretty straightforward process. So actually, a lot of people do use the RDSP kind of to shelter inheritances. And especially for people who are in their 50s who want to open an RDSP and aren't getting those government contributions, but having it as a way to keep those assets in there. So with the regular, BC, PWD, persons with disabilities income assistance, people are allowed to have $100,000 in assets. So this is outside of money that's in the RDSP. Now, so you can have that. However, you need to be careful about what that money is saved in, because, for example, if you were to put that inheritance, say, in a tax-free savings account, you run the risk of losing some of your future benefits, because any investment income that's earned in a TFSA, that's considered unearned income to the ministry, must be reported in the month that it's received, even if you are not personally receiving that money in your pocket. And then your next month's paycheck will be reduced dollar for dollar by that amount of growth that was in there. And so with the RDSP, on the other hand, that, again, up to $200,000 personal contributions, that doesn't tie into the $100,000 asset. So it's completely separate. So you got this extra up to $200,000, and you can put the money in the RDSP, and then you can invest it. The money can grow, and you don't worry about losing any eligibility. The only thing to consider with the RDSP is that it is, once you put money in, it's kind of locked in for a little bit. Yeah, so that's because of that 10-year rule, where if you do get any of those government contributions, they have to be in there from 10 years from the date of the last deposit. Otherwise, taking money out is going to cause a repayment of some of those. So it's just a matter of like what you want to be able to do with that money, how long you want to store it. If you're, thinking, okay, great, I just want this for my retirement years, I'm going to put it in my RDSP, start taking withdrawals in 60s and, use it that way. Or do you want to use it a little bit sooner, in which case you might want to look at other ways that you can save that money. Again, knowing, that amount is well within your asset limit for the income assistance. It's just a matter of whether that money will continue to be invested in a non-RDSP savings tool.
Yeah. I did phone like a while ago about it, and the bank told me that I could put the money in the RDSP, but they said it had to be a certain RDSP account, which I don't understand. Like, I thought that they were all the same. like she said it had to do with, I don't know what she even called it. She said that there's different, I don't know, maybe different levels or something. I was very confused because I thought an RSD, whatever it is like all the same. Like you just open one
Might,
and that's it.
yeah, yeah. You know, she might be talking about disability trusts. So
Okay.
that's another vehicle to put your money into. Let's say if you do go above the $100,000 limit. And what I'll say first is, um, you know, if you're under the $100,000 limit, you do have to report any inheritance that you do get to the ministry.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, when it comes to putting in the money, it's going to be okay in terms of the asset limit. You do have to worry about income if you do receive, let's say, a T5 slip from your TFSA. That's when you'll have to worry about kind of having that deducted dollar for dollar. When it comes to putting money in something outside of your regular savings vehicles, then you do want to look at RDSPs versus disability trusts. And there are different kinds of disability trusts. So that might be, you know, discretionary or non-discretionary trusts. Those
Okay.
just have differences in, you know, the kinds of agreements that you might have with other people, and what kind of control that you might have within a certain trust. So that's something to look out for. The RDSP, though, even though there are different types of investments that you can make, that is completely, it should not sort of affect the amount that you can put in. It's true that sort of they operate in a very similar way. If you have an RDSP actually open, it shouldn't be the case that you need to have it be a certain type of RDSP. So maybe something to do is you can go to your financial advisor and really make sure what financial holding you actually have. Do you have an RDSP, or do you have a qualified disability trust, or do you have another type of disability trust? That would be something that you want to ask. And if you want any sort of advocate assistance or anything like that, we do have a program, the Advocacy Access Program, that does provide support on PWD related questions as well. So if anybody here has questions about how they might report to the ministry, what might be affected might be considered unearned income or things like that, please do call Disability Alliance BC. We'd be happy to help.
Yeah. Yeah, all I know is that I just have an RSDP or whatever it's called. Yeah, that's all I got. So when she told me that, I was like all confused. Like I
Yeah,
just don't want to get like, all the money like, taken away or, have it like, stuff like
for
that.
sure. Hopefully that offered a little bit of clarity. And also,
Yeah.
like Cynthia said, you can reach out to the Disability Alliance BC with any questions that you have as well. And talking to your financial advisor about what kind of account you have set up right now. Yeah. So thanks so much for your question, because I'm sure that's a question that a lot of people were wondering about. So thank you,
Okay.
Christina. Good. Awesome. I would love to talk about some of the different sort of government contributions that you can apply for. So what would be a good way for somebody to start sort of researching about some of the contributions that they may be eligible for?
I can take this one. Unless Petra, you want to jump in?
I'll add some other things
Okay.
as we keep going along, I guess.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so with the RDSP, again, as Cynthia mentioned, the last possible year to get any of those government contributions is the end of the year in which you turn 49. So you as the beneficiary or the person who qualifies for the disability tax credit. Now, we use that language because that's the language that the government uses, and they're very particular and specific about that. So we know there's no wiggle room, that is what it is. So in order to receive those, there's basically you can look at the bonds first. So the bonds, those are available to people just by opening up the RDSP and having their income taxes filed. So if the RDSP is open, they qualify for the DTC, they are the right age, the government has their income tax return for 2 years prior to determine current year's eligibility, which is also a bit odd how they do that, but it makes sense because at the beginning of this year, 2 years prior is the most readily available tax data that the government has. Once that's complete, it is based on family income. So I believe for 2023, if your family income is at or below around $32,000, then you would receive the full $1,000 bond for that year. You can receive up to $1,000 per year, up to a total of $20,000. As well, Cynthia had alluded to that there are retroactive government contributions available. And so because the disability tax credit can be applied for and approved up to 10 years in the past and can be, reassessed with your taxes up to 10 years in the past, then the grants and bonds can also be received up to 10 years in the past. So let's say, for example, someone is approved for the disability tax credit from 2013 to 2033. So they open in 2023, they've got 10 years of contributions. Let's say they're under the age of 49. And so at that point, because the bonds don't require anything other than your income taxes being filed and up to date, and your income to be at the level to qualify, any bond amounts that you were owed or could have received, those will automatically go into the RDSP. So usually it would be within probably 4 to 5 months of opening the account. And then every single year in about February, March, the government will automatically put that in. So really important to make sure that the income taxes are filed. And outside of that, there's also the grants. So for people who are able to deposit money into the RDSP, the government will match up to $3 for every $1 you put in. The amounts that they will match also depends on income, but it's a much higher threshold. So it's $100,000 roughly. So if your family income is at or below that, then you would be able to receive the highest matching grants. So you deposit $1,500 or about $125 a month. The government will give you $3,500, which is the limit for that year. And then pretty much the same thing for retroactive grants. You will have to deposit money. It's a little bit complicated how the government assesses that because they do all the highest matching grants first and then do the lowest ones for all previous years. But really the easiest way for anybody to know how much money they could receive would be you can always go to rdsp.com and try out the calculator that's on there. That would give you an idea of how much you could expect to receive. Also looking at how much money you're planning on depositing or would likely be able to contribute. But every single year, again, around February, March, Employment Social Development Canada, which is the government branch that basically oversees the RDSP and provides the grants and bonds, they'll mail out something called a statement of entitlement. And so this will come every year. And this just tells the RDSP holder, kind of who manages that account, how much money to deposit to get the maximum grants. So they'll do this every single year. They'll base it on your tax returns. They will include retroactive grants. So as long as when you open the RDSP, you filled out the form and said, yes, I want to receive these grants and bonds, then they'll do the work for you. You just have to follow up with them. And of course, if you have just recently opened your RDSP or, you for some reason didn't get that letter by, kind of end of March, you can also call into the government line pretty much any time. And as long as you have your RDSP number, social insurance number, birthday, then the government rep should be able to tell you that any time of the year as well. Hopefully that makes sense. But
Yeah,
let me know if
it's a
there are
lot
any
of
questions.
lot of information, but that was great. We do have a couple questions in the chat. If we can move on to that. Regarding grants, this is coming from George. What about people who only become disabled after the age of 49? Is there some information on grants for that?
Yeah. So I definitely want to also answer this with Petra as well, but the first thing that I'll say is you might still want to open the RDSP if you're over 49. If you do have, if you do feel like your asset limit might be above the $100,000 and you want that asset exemption, so that's a reason why you still might open up something like the RDSP. So that's still available to you. The primary qualifier for the RDSP is the disability tax credit. That is a completely separate benefit, even though it's related, in that it has its own eligibility criteria, and there's no age restrictions for that. And that would be a tax reduction, non-refundable tax credit. And it's also connected to other disability benefits. So something also for you to get. But Plan Institute and Disability Alliance BC also partnered with Prosper Canada, or we collaborated on a tool with Prosper Canada, which I'm going to put into the chat right now. and it's called the Benefits Wayfinder. And I think it's a really good thing to maybe visit first to see any tax-related or not tax-related disability benefits that are out there. And this also includes not just disability benefits, but benefits that are going to be applicable for different life circumstances. And in conjunction with that, we also have a disability benefits compass, which goes through sort of the big four principal disability benefits, which are first, your disability assistance that's in your province. In BC, that's the PWD disability designation. Second, CPPD disability or CPP disability, which is the Canada Pension Plan disability for those who cannot work at all. And then DTC and RDSP. So those are the two links that I'm going to be putting into the chat. And I'll also let Petra add anything that I've missed.
I was definitely going to speak a little bit about the Canada Pension Plan disability benefits, but you did. That's the great thing about having so many people who know stuff. It's great. All right, thank you.
That's perfect. We had a question from Nikki in the chat as well, asking, is there a minimum deposit required to open an RDSP account?
Yeah, good question. So in short, no, there is no minimum requirement. I believe when the plan first came out in 2008, I think there was a $25 minimum contribution to open the account, but that has since been it's gone. So now there's no requirement to do that. Individual financial institutions might have that, but it really varies. I mean, at this point, almost every financial institution does offer the RDSP. And so while the plan and the regulations around that are this have to be applied the same regardless of the institution, things about individual investments, certain withdrawal rules, whether you are able to take early withdrawals from the RDSP, how the communication works, all of those types of things will be different with each financial institution. So a bit of a long answer there, but in short, no, there shouldn't be a minimum, although some individual financial institutions might have a policy around that, just depending on the investments. Petra, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so just as Liss said, there is no minimum to open up the account, pending on the financial organizations that you may be working with or any financial planners. But it is a really great idea to have something to put in there so you can take advantage of the disability savings grant, so you can get that extra money.
Awesome. That's great. We do have one more question in the chat, and then Christine and I will go to you. Okay. Amir asked, is there any institute other than TD Waterhouse for RDSP accounts for stock investing? Do we know anything about this? I see Cynthia nodding her head.
Sorry, I didn't actually read through that question, Amir. I will have to defer to Liss to answer this question.
Okay.
I'm actually unsure.
I'm not 100% sure where you can invest stocks. I know with exchange traded funds, TD is one of, I think, 3 institutions that allow that type of investing where it's basically self-directed. It's TD Waterhouse, and it'll come to me and I'll put it in the chat. So it may just require a little bit of research and connecting with financial institutions and asking what types of investments. Unfortunately, it's not usually that easy to find it on different websites. So normally you have to actually contact the financial institution to get more information on what type of investments they offer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, yes, so I've had my RDSP account for over 10 years. And other than TD Waterhouse, I have not found any other institution in Canada that would let you trade the stocks in your RDSP, which is very frustrating. I called all of them, all the banks, the brokerage, as much as I know, For
Mhm.
some strange reason, TD Waterhouse is the only one in Canada that will let you to trade the stocks.
Okay, I will. So with our RDSP Level 2 webinar, we've worked with a facilitator who is an accountant, and he's a former professor of business. And so he has been very active in the RDSP movement, and he also is very familiar with financial institutions and investment options. So I will check in with him. So if you just want to send me like a private chat message with your email, I can follow up with him, and then I can get back to you just to see if he might have some ideas, because I think he and I have chatted about that before.
Thank you. Sure. Thanks a lot.
That's great. Yeah, Amir, you can private direct message Liss in Zoom, and then you guys can stay in touch. That's great. Christina.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you, like, you were saying like all financial institutes. My RDSP is at RBC, so I opened it like years ago. So then they told me that it's just at RBC, right? So, but are they at every bank now, or is that wrong?
It's almost every bank. Whether this is one of the big banks in Canada that are national, whether it's provincial or territorial credit union, independent financial services companies, or things like Primerica or Sun Life or Investia Financial, like ones where they have independent financial professionals that work with them. So it is widely available. However, I will say that the knowledge around the RDSP for financial institutions and professionals is not similar across the board. You may find that you'll go to a branch and there will be people who are extremely knowledgeable about the RDSP. You may call up and have the same experience, or it could be the opposite. You could go in and talk to someone, you could have a phone call, and they may have no idea, or they may have very little idea, or possibly give you misinformation or incorrect information. And so it really does vary quite widely, the knowledge about that. So in short, yes, it is available at most financial institutions, but the knowledge around the RDSP and how it functions is going to vary depending, like sometimes it's even just an individual location for one of the larger
Yeah, that's
banks
what I
or
was
credit
just gonna ask.
unions.
Like, I kind of don't like having separate banks like for that,
Mhm.
So then I was thinking, well, now that I heard that maybe it's at my regular bank that I use it all the time, maybe I could transfer it or whatever, right? But now that you said like maybe one bank doesn't know like enough about the other, like, about it or something. So maybe I should just leave it the way it is.
Maybe. I mean, I think it would depend on how well you think the RDSP is doing and how comfortable you feel with the financial professional you're working with. If you don't feel like you're having someone who's knowledgeable and able to answer your questions and is, really familiar with how the RDSP works and how to invest your money and, kind of what the longer term strategy is. If you're happy with that, then, definitely stay. But you can transfer your RDSP to another institution. And you could even just like have an initial phone call or email and say, hey, I'm thinking about transferring. What can you tell me about the RDSP? Especially as an RDSP holder yourself, you probably already have some knowledge about that. So it could be a little bit of a quiz to see their level of expertise.
Oh, okay, that's great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for asking, Christina. We have another question in the chat from Carol. For persons not working for 26 years due to children and just applying now for the disability tax credit at 60 years old, what am I entitled to in terms of retirement from my spouse? Can anyone speak to that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that, it's a bit of a individual situation. If you would like to get in touch with Disability Alliance BC, if you are living in BC, or the Disability Planning Helpline, we can definitely help you more on a more granular level. What I will say is that if you're 60 years old, then probably not, the DTC might be the only vehicle for you yourself. Obviously, then you would go into CPP, and that would have its own different. There would be sort of different different things to look at around CPP retirement in general than sort of the other disability benefit related things that we're talking about. So I think to really get you to understand maybe this particular circumstance, I think I would recommend advocacy support, and we can sort of go through that at Disability Alliance BC if you need tax related support or other kinds of support as well.
Great. Yeah, something where you can maybe disclose a little bit more about your personal situation and have some more one-on-one sort of chats. Great. Let's talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements in general for the disability tax credit, because it seems, if I'm understanding it correctly, you need to have that before you can open an RDSP. So can we kind of go over how someone would go about applying for that?
Absolutely. Yeah, the disability tax credit is probably the most strenuous part about getting the RDSP. But we do want to think about it as connected, but its own separate entity. So before we jump into who's eligible, I do want to reiterate that it has its own eligibility criteria, and it's sort of a disconnected benefit in that it has its own benefits and other reasons why you should be applying for it. So by itself, it's a non-refundable tax credit that helps reduce the taxes that you owe. It is also 10 years retroactive, so very similar to what Liss said about the RDSP. You can access up to 10 years of retroactive tax credits that you were owed before you applied. But the other thing is you can also transfer any credits to a caregiver. So that means that if you have someone in your life that's financially helping you with food, shelter, or clothing, so paying for groceries, helping with rent, or helping with shelter, or giving you money for clothes, you can actually transfer unused amounts of your tax credit onto their taxes so that they get a reduction in their taxes. And the way that it works, it would go through your taxes first and then be applied to theirs. So you don't have to worry about, taking it back when you need to. The way you're eligible is that you'd have to qualify under the specific way that the disability tax credit understands disability. And that is to be a tax resident of Canada and have your SIN number, but also to have restrictions in mental or physical impairments or mental and physical health restrictions that are prolonged and severe. So under this definition, prolonged means will be expected to last at least 1 year. So that's different from other provincial disability assistance benefits. So for this one, restrictions have to last at least 1 year. And then severe means that you have restrictions in basic daily functioning in a subset of activities. And those activities include vision, speaking, hearing, dressing, feeding, which means eating or preparing meals, walking, eliminating, which is using the toilet, and mental functions necessary for everyday life. So you can either be very restricted in one of those basic activities, which means you can't do the activity, takes you a lot longer to do the activity, or you need assistance to do this activity, or you can be somewhat restricted, so restricted a little less, but in 2 or more of the categories. And the cumulative effect of these restrictions would equate a market restriction. So those are 2 ways you can qualify. The third way is if you also require life-sustaining therapy to support a vital function. That might include insulin therapy, kidney dialysis, chest physiotherapy, and you need that at least 2 times a week for 14 hours a week. So that's sort of the eligibility criteria of who would qualify. To the rest of you, am I missing anything, Petra and Liss?
No, you explained it very well. Thank you. So it's important to note that the eligibility for the disability tax credit is not based on your diagnosis, but just how much your disability affects you in those categories that Cynthia just listed.
That's a good thing for clarity, for sure. Liss, do you have anything to add? I also see that you and Petra both put some resources in the chat that can help for this. Benefits Finder and DABC's free online tool?
Yeah, so with our partnership with DAVC and BCANS, it's been absolutely fantastic. I've learned so much, especially with the tools and resources that they have. So the links I put in the chat is for their free online disability tax credit tool, which basically gives kind of an overview of what to expect on the form. So it'll ask you about restrictions in each of those categories, ask you some of the questions that would be found on the form. It will be the medical practitioner that is completing the disability tax credit application form. So a medical doctor and a nurse practitioner can fill out all sections, but otherwise the sections also have individual medical practitioners based on their specialty. So for example, a psychologist can fill out the mental functions category, an audiologist can fill out the hearing section, so on and so forth. But using that tool and then kind of reviewing the help sheet as well, just gets a better understanding of like how to have that conversation with the medical practitioner so that they really understand how your disability impacts you and what your restrictions are, because that I think we find is one of the challenges with people not being approved is that, you know, they may fill it out, but not have the clearest understanding or may not be able to provide the specific examples that are needed. And then in some categories, it may be more difficult to qualify than others. So highly suggest, especially if it's your first time applying for the DTC, to work with an advocate or an organization or service provider that, you know, is really knowledgeable about that, just to try to improve the chances of being approved in the future.
Okay, great advice, great resources in the chat. Awesome. How can we talk about how the RDSP financial planning for adults might differ from that for children?
Petra, do you want to take that one? If not, I'm also happy to answer that.
Well, the main thing that comes to mind when we're thinking about the RDSP for adults versus for children is that, like, how do I put this into words? So with adults, you know, they are older and they have less time to contribute to their RDSP. And so they have less time to take advantage of all the grants and the bonds and all of those additional supports. However, I was mostly thinking about, like, when I got this question, I was mostly thinking about when you had to get the disability tax credit first. For children, it goes back 10 years. So if your child was under 18 within those 10 years, you would be eligible for the child disability benefits. So that would also give you a nice amount of money, depending on your income from those past 10 years, and also depending on your child's income, that you can, you know, end up putting into the RDSP if you wanted to. But that was the main thing that I was thinking of, is that there is a limited amount of time for you to take advantage of the grants and bonds, and then also the DTC. Would you like to add anything else, Liz?
Yeah, thanks for that, Petra. So I think that's a great point as well, you know, especially for any parents or guardians who may be tuning in, that with your child being eligible for the disability tax credit, it does open up that additional child disability. It's supplement to the Canada Child Benefit. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Canada's, it's
yeah.
a child disability benefit.
Okay, thank you. So
there's many acronyms. It's hard to keep track sometimes.
Yeah. And the only other thing I would say in terms of the main difference is that when the RDSP is open for a child beneficiary, so this will be a beneficiary that is in the year they turn 18 or younger, then the income for the grants and bonds is going to be based on their parents' or legal guardians' family income. And so they may not be eligible for the full bond. They may not be eligible for, you know, the high matching grant, but there will still always be some available in grants, even with, you know, over $100,000 in income. They still do a one-to-one matching grant for the first $1,000. And then once the child is in the year they turn 19, then the grant and bond eligibility is going to be based on their own income. So a tip that we would recommend is that the parents or guardians have that teenager's year's taxes filed no later than the end of the year they turn 17, because again, the government will look 2 years back. So when they're 19, the government will look at their 17-year-old income, even if it's a null tax return, that's completely fine. Then they've got the correct amount of information, because if no income tax is filed, either in that certain circumstance or just for anyone who opens the RDSP, the government is going to assume that for those years, they were a high income earner, so they'll get no bond and the least amount of matching grants possible. So that's the only other thing I would mention in terms of planning around that.
Great. That's great information. Awesome. Okay. And then really, I can't believe how quickly these conversations go by, but we have about 10 minutes left. This has come up a couple of times. So I would love to just have a little bit of an overview of the CPP, the Canadian Pension Plan, and for people living with disabilities, what required eligibility requirements are for that to open a CPP. Who wants to start that off? Maybe Liss?
I think Cynthia might actually be the most qualified to answer this based on her work with CPPD. I can answer, but Cynthia, I think you would have more readily available knowledge.
Definitely, I can answer. I was gonna see if Petra wanted to first as well, but definitely happy to answer this too. So CPP disability is a benefit that's out there for anyone who's under 65. And what you'd have to have is a medical practitioner who certifies that you have mental or physical restrictions that regularly stops you from doing any type of work. So not just the work that you're in right now, but conceivably any type of work. So that's a really important qualification there. And the difficulty and the difference also is that disability must be long-term and indefinite. So unlike the disability tax credit where we saw prolonged meant 1 year, prolonged in this application means that it is indefinite, lifelong, and will be expected to be lifelong. The other criteria is that you have to have contributed enough to Canada Pension Plan. And that means you have to meet the minimum contribution criteria, which is 4 to 6 years. You have to contributed 4 out of 6 years before you became disabled. That just means that, let's say you became disabled in 2015. Well, you would have had to contribute from, now I've lost my train of math, but 2009 to 2015, you would have had to contribute 4 out of those 6 years. And those are sort of the criteria that you would have to meet. But Canada Pension Plan works kind of like disability assistance. It is a monthly assistance program, and oftentimes it'll work in conjunction with your provincial disability assistance plans. In BC with PWD, a lot of times PWD will ask people to apply for CPPD because they kind of want to offset some of the costs. You do get a little bit more if you have CPPD, but CPPD does not come with extended health benefits. So we usually ask people to apply for your PWD first, and then if you do qualify for the CPPD top-up, you can apply for that as well. But I do want to reiterate that it is separate and has its own criteria and benefits as to why you might get this instead of PWD or things like that. One thing that I'll say is it is easier to apply for PWD if you already have CPPD, and that's because people with CPPD will be considered a prescribed class and will have an easier application to PWD. But once you get it, it'll be those monthly payments. Sometimes if you qualify for a certain number of years, let's say from that 2015 marker that we started with in our example, you will get a lump sum that you'll get all at once. Something to be careful of if you have a lump sum is that these amounts are considered income and could raise you above income thresholds for other credits like GST credits and things like that. The other thing to hold on to is that this is a taxable payment. So when you do receive CPP payments, you also have to be mindful that you will have to pay taxes on them after. So please keep a little bit aside so that you can pay your taxes. And the disability tax credit can help reduce the taxes that you pay on this payment.
Awesome.
Yes,
Does anyone want to add? Yeah.
Well, I can't really speak with experience or anything about the C CPP. Oh my gosh, the Canada Pension Plan. However, I do have kind of a question for Cynthia. So, in regards to a question that was asked earlier by Carol, there are some provisions with child rearing when you're applying for the Canada Pension Plan disability. Are you able to elaborate a little bit on that?
For Canada Pension Plan, so yeah, so I will say with sort of like the spousal support or things like that, that you can get, that's sort of the Canada Pension Plan in general. And I would say outside of Canada Pension Plan disability. But for Canada Pension Plan disability, something that they do say, and I don't know if this is what you're getting at, is that minimum qualifying period, those 4 to 6 years that you have to contribute to your disability, to your Canada Pension Plan in order to apply. There's an exception to that rule, and then it is if you weren't working because you were taking care of a child, then you do not have to meet that minimum qualifying period. So that is the exception to that if you were taking care of a child at that time. But definitely, if you are thinking about doing this, I will say Canada Pension Plan disability does have, a very high rejection rate because of, some of the criteria that's involved. So I would speak to an advocate about applying. The second thing that I will say that's a little bit weird about Canada Pension Plan disability is in order to qualify, your medical practitioner would have to say you're not eligible to work any job. But once you do get Canada Pension Plan disability, you actually can make a little bit of money around that $6,000 mark. So there are exceptions to everything, and to really be informed before you jump into applying with an advocate's help would be a very great way to get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving a little bit more information on that.
I hope it helped.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate how knowledgeable everybody is on this topic, and obviously the participation of people that are attending this Zoom event. Again, this will live live on our Facebook and YouTube pages, so you can go back and revisit. I have copied the chat, and I'm going to take note of the resources mentioned. I see there's a couple more being put in here right now by Liss, which is awesome. And they will be up on our website probably in about a week's time under our resources page. So again, thank you so much to Petra and Cynthia and Liss. We really appreciate it. I think we could talk about this for another hour easily. Maybe we'll do another follow-up. But yeah, I just really appreciate the work that you do. And please check out Disability Alliance and Plan Institute and Easter Seals. Their websites are also listed in the chat for more information. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was really great. Good information. Okay, see you. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. I hope to work with you in the future as well. Again, Cynthia and Petra and Liss. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
So you have copied the chat?
Yes. And also, okay, good. For Carol, you haven't. Yes, I have copied the chat. Yeah. So I will
I'm
put
so
that.
sorry, there's a typo. I just wanted to, if Carol's still on,
Oh, yeah.
I just had a typo in my email, so I'm just going to type it again, Carol.
Oh yeah, you're good.
I'm sorry. Okay,
No
thank you
problem.
so much, Emily, and thank you for having me, and very nice to
Yeah.
meet you, Petra.
Thanks
It was
for being
lovely to
here.
meet all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me to join.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Petra. Have a great day.
Bye.